Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is TRICIA CAREY. I'm based at the Lensing New York office, and I handle global business development, focusing on our denim market, as well as overseeing the Americas business development team. And joining me today is my colleague, Michael KININMONTH. Michael?
Hello, everybody. I'm Michael KININMONTH. I've worked in Tencel since 1995, and I'm part of the Lensing denim team.
So Michael and I wanted to have a little chat, kind of a fireside chat, that we wanted to share some of our thoughts as we decode the global denim market. I think we have a lot of perspective, and actually combined, both of us have close to 50 years experience in business development around Tencel. And so, Michael, I think we have to look at the past and look at the history in order to understand today's Tencel and where we're going in the future. We actually are celebrating our 30 years of Tencel Lyocell this year as a company. And Michael, as you mentioned, you joined Tencel in the mid-1990s. I started around 1998. And wondering if you could give us some insight on how relevant is the Tencel Lyocell fibers beginnings, the early days, to what it has become today.
Well, I think if you were to sit down today to design the ideal textile fiber, I think the overriding requirements would have to be that it'd have to be produced from abundant raw material, it would have to be produced from a renewable raw material, and it would have to be manufactured in an environmentally responsible way. And what I would say to that is, welcome to Tencel Lyocell. If we were to jump in our time machine and go back more than 40 years, this fiber was being designed and thought about with all those elements in mind in the mid-1980s. So it was a product way ahead of its time. The first ever fiber to be designed with that unique selling proposition. It was a real revolution in cellulose fibers, and it's the original lyocell. In the late 1970s, there was a lot of viscose production in Western Europe, but it was really coming under pressure, mainly from increasingly strict environmental protection regulations. And companies were facing significant economic and ecological issues. And a lot of viscose producers shied away from new investments and were pulling out of that industry. Lensing were a European-based company, as were Courtaulds, as were Enka. And Enka was the world's largest manufacturer of viscose filament at the time. And they were the first to look at something that they called the new cell process, which used the process and the solvent that now is used in the lyocell process. However, they didn't really follow the strategy through. Their parent company wanted to invest more in paints and pharmaceuticals, and it ended up that Lensing and Courtaulds, who were the main competition of Lensing, took the license from Akzo and started looking at this technology. And Courtaulds were the first to launch what was the new lyocell, and they branded that Tencel, and that was in 1992. So the new technology became what is known today as the lyocell process, based on a solvent spinning production, and represented probably the greatest ever achievement in cellulose fiber technology. More than 100 patents were granted over that time at an international level, and Tencel as the brand was launched. You had a unique closed loop production process that made Tencel future-proof. And here we are in that future, and the development of Tencel has continued at a pace. So now we've come up to date. My question to pass over to Tricia is that the denim business is always changing and has been particularly fluid in the last few years, trying to adapt to environmental pressures. So how is this reflected in the way that Tencel has evolved to meet those challenges?
Well, thanks, Michael. And that's quite a loaded question, actually. And in thinking about that, I would say one of the first aspects that the denim market was really looking at from an environmental perspective was around water. And that makes a lot of sense because of all of the laundry processing that's required for denim. And I think as the industry started to address water, then they also started to look at many other aspects as well. Looking at circularity, looking at biodegradability and compostability, transparency, climate action has really become of interest in the past, I would say 18 months or so. And even more, besides the environmental impacts, people are now looking more and more at the social impact of our industry in the denim market. And a lot of this is related back to cotton fiber. But if we go back and look at where this process has been and how we can look at the entire garment and how we can continue to lower the impact, looking at water, and this relating back to Tencel lyocell, when we use our raw materials, which are fibers, coming from the raw material of trees, and just to, highlight that again here, the trees that we are using are from managed tree farms. So it's responsible forestry where there's no irrigation. So we already have less impact on the water side than say other fibers that are growing from seed. Also, when you look at the water impacts, we've put a lot of information into HIG data. So you can look at comparisons there to other fibers based on water. When we address some of the challenges that the industry has around circularity, here, we were actually the first to innovate around a chemical recycling, and that's with our Refibra fiber. We launched Refibra in 2017 with 20% post-industrial cotton waste that we made into pulp. We are now at a blend of 30% post-industrial waste from cotton, as well as 10% post-consumer, to reach a total of 30% waste. And that's for our Refibra technology that we have today, all using lyocell production process. So I think our leadership in Refibra, as well as the ability for us to scale Refibra, and we've had some incredible denim programs over the past 5 years using Refibra, from brands like Levi's, Closed, Kings of Indigo, Boyish Denim. And we really see that the market has done a lot to innovate around circularity, not only with what we have with Refibra, but also with mechanical recycling. So mixing mechanical recycled cotton with Refibra, another innovation, to develop products that we see are marketed that have no new cotton. I mean, this is really a different way of approaching the denim market. We also see the interest in biodegradability and compostability, and this has been communicated all the way to the consumer level. Our brand partners are very interested in trying to understand what happens at end of use, end of life of a garment. So Lenzing has even commissioned studies that we worked on with Scripps the end of last year that we launched, where we look at our impact end of life, whether it's marine or land. So we do have a product that is biodegradable and compostable. Then when we look at the challenge that the market has had around transparency, and this came on in a couple of different ways, looking at the transparency to understand each step of the supply chain and how a product is produced, but also to have a traceability. So they're both interconnected. For us at Lenzing, we add the fiber identification into our fibers so that we can verify that it is our Tencel lyocell. This is a part of our fabric certification program and e-branding that we offer. And we have more and more brands that are registering on our e-branding platform. And a lot of this has to do with compliance, to have that assurance that they're using Tencel lyocell. So the transparency aspect related back to compliance as well as to the brand assurance that we provide. And then finally, the big challenge that we have as an industry and really as a society as a whole is around how do we lower our carbon footprint. And here our climate action, what we've done at Lenzing is very early on come up with commitments. In 2019, we had approved science-based targets. Then this also led into various commitments that we've made with other industry organizations, like with the United Nations, with the UN Fashion Compact, that we are going to be net zero by 2050. But we've also been able to bring this into a product level. And I think that's very important. Our Carbon Zero Tencel, which we launched in 2020, so that's actually amazing to think that in the middle of the pandemic, we were able to come up with this product innovation where we can actually provide a fiber that has zero carbon footprint. And this is really different than anything else that can be offered in the market along the lines of man-made cellulosic fibers. So our Carbon Zero Tencel lyocell and modal fibers are unique. They provide the lower footprint that is needed as a starting point for the industry, as well as the commitment that Lenzing has as a company around lowering our carbon footprint. And I'd like to put the umbrella for a lot of these challenges under the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So if it's SDG 12, responsible consumption and production, to SDG 13, which is climate action, and overall, we know that we have to work together in order to make this happen and lower our environmental footprint, as well as being aware of our social impacts. So those are some of the areas I see, Michael, where we've looked to really provide a lot of solutions for the market around our fibers. So let me ask you though, Michael, what does the future hold for textile fibers in the denim market? What do you see is coming ahead?
Well, I'll look into my crystal ball, and I would say that you made reference before to say that in recent years, some denim mills have produced cotton-free articles. Do I see a future where cotton may not be required in the denim industry? Well, I think for historical reasons, cotton and polyester have come to dominate textile fibers because they've been abundant, they've been cheap, and they've been versatile. In the future, those same reasons will be clearly important. However, I'd say additional issues have started to become important also, and everybody will know that the main one of these is sustainability. And the demise of cotton or polyester would be bad news for everybody, for the industry as well as customers, as the events that challenge their dominance or even existence will also have far-reaching effects on all our lives. So for the sake of all of us, I'd say improving the production of cotton and polyester fibers to maximize global impact should be welcomed. But there's no getting away from that there are macro issues facing cotton and polyester, and that creates opportunities for companies like Lenzing. Polyester future is challenged by the fact that the raw material is oil, and oil is a finite resource. More recent revelations about microplastic pollution brings extra pressures on such a product. In terms of issues affecting cotton, I'd say they're more directly relevant than polyester to man-made cellulosics. due to the fact that cotton can be directly substituted by Tencel or modal or viscose. Historically, Tencel and modal have been blended into fabrics for aesthetic reasons, for performance reasons, and for sustainability reasons. But probably recently, for the first time, Lenzing's gained customers simply for price reasons. Currently, standard Tencel is lower in price than cotton is. First time that's ever happened. You could argue that cotton is not competing with other textile fibers, actually, but is actually competing with other arable crops. The world is growing short of land. Commodity prices are going up, especially on food, and farmers have a choice what they can grow. Therefore, planting crops that will bring a higher price is a more attractive proposition. And in many cases, those crops have, compared to cotton, there's less labor and are less resource intensive. The world population continues to grow, global GDP increases, which stimulates an increase for fiber demand. And the cotton crop has not actually increased in decades. It remains stagnant at around 25 million tons per year. So some other fibers have to fill that shortfall. So today, cellulose, which is the basis of our fibers, is seen from a completely different perspective than it was 40 years ago, when the finite nature of raw materials based on crude oil was not even considered to be really relevant. So cellulose is the most abundant natural polymer on Earth. It will still be with us when the last drop of oil comes out of the ground. So cellulose fibers will become the most important fiber resource, albeit cotton, linen, hemp, viscose, modal, or Tencel. And I would say due to Tencel's properties, its characteristics and environmental footprint, Tencel will endure and is probably the best blending partner for all other textile fibers. So I think the future is very positive for Tencel. So that's the kind of fiber aspect of the future. But I'd come back to you, Trish, and say, what do you think the future holds for the denim business in general?
Well, I think the future for the denim business is definitely one where we're going to start to look at consumption in a different way. You know, we've been on such a rise of more and more and more. I think there'll be more of a realization that trends are timeless. We've always had in the denim market a way of looking back at our history. So I think there'll be more of pulling from our history the resale of garments. And I think we'll start to see vintage garments sold right next to brand new garments. We have to look at circularity, not only from a fiber level, but also from a way of resale, reuse, renewal of garments. So it's not just one way that we have to keep garments in circulation longer. So I think we'll also be looking at ways that we can produce a garment that will last longer, bring value back, bring real value back into garments. And that does start with using the right fiber. So I think consumers will have a different perspective on what they're buying. I think we'll also see in the future more regulation, more policy. We already have this now with the Green Deal coming into Europe. In the United States, we're having more policy, not only from states of California, but also here in New York State. The New York Fashion Sustainability Act is up for proposal, which would mean brands or any retailer, any brand retailing in New York State would have to provide 50% of their supply chain transparency. There's also circularity and greenhouse gas information connected to this. And I think we'll continue to see innovations like our innovation that we had with Tencel modal with indigo color technology, which you'll be learning more about today. We'll have more innovations where we are addressing ways that we can lower our environmental impact, looking at things differently. You know, for modal indigo, we looked at how we could apply indigo in a different way than just on a yarn level. So I think innovations that are tied back to the environment will be more and more important within the denim industry. I think another area that we're starting to see is looking at nearshoring, having more local production happening. In the United States is one area, or branching into North America as well as Mexico. You see it also, Michael, in the UK. It's popping up in other regions as well. It's this local sense of where products need to come from, you know, from kind of a farm to table type of mentality. This will also happen with our apparel. But of course, the overarching theme is that nothing like this will happen without collaboration. We really have to think differently now. We know that our industry has to change. We have these discussions, but more so than ever, it is really relevant. And if we don't change now, when will we? So I think, you know, we're at this dynamic, very interesting crossroads in our industry. And I welcome the chance that we are a part of it, as well as our customers that support what needs to happen in the future. So I wanted to thank everyone for joining us today.
Así que, Gilberto, te vamos a traer ahora con nosotros porque queremos saber un poquitito más sobre algunas acciones. ¿Cómo estás? ¿Todo bien?
Muy bien. Es siempre bueno estar acá con usted, con los compañeros, todos los que están con nosotros.
No, la verdad que yo agradezco muchísimo el apoyo de Tencel, pero no solamente con nuestro evento TRIPPIN'BLUE. Yo creo que Tencel ha apoyado diseñadores experimentales, gente que hace tipos distintos de confecciones, gente que está metido en toda la parte de design y necesita entender más sobre las medidas, sobre las métricas, sobre los impactos, a los estudiantes. O sea, si ustedes tienen la chance de ir a TRIPPIN'BLUE, van a ver que es un blog que tiene tanta información, tanta pasión metida en el mundo donde nosotros estamos, que es el mundo del jeanswear, y ustedes van a tener acceso a una cantidad de material infinita con mucha información potente y relevante. Así que nada, después dejo ahí el sitio para que lo puedan investigar. Y Gilberto, tenerte acá, distintamente de la otra vez, que de la otra vez fue un show de Gilberto, una simpatía, una empatía con ese público, y hoy lo vamos a tener poquito para el Q&A. Pero ya tengo acá una pregunta en mi privado que Juliana pregunta un poquito sobre todo lo que se hace de circularidad. O sea, ¿dónde es el impacto de Tencel cuando hablamos sobre circularidad? ¿Hay fibras circulares?
Bueno, esto es un tema que nos gusta mucho. Como dices, siempre es un placer porque en verdad vivimos en un mundo que es lo mismo mundo de todos nosotros. Entonces tenemos que trabajar por este mundo siempre haciendo esta unión, ¿no? Que todos trabajen en la misma dirección, siempre para reducir los impactos, este tipo de cosas. La circularidad es una de las cosas que más se trabaja hoy en día porque nosotros tenemos una cantidad de basura que es exponida al mundo muy grande. Entonces, ¿por qué no mirar esta basura no como basura, pero como una materia prima que se puede utilizar? La fibra de nosotros son hechas de celulosa. Bueno, los árboles tienen celulosa, el algodón es celulosa, ropas de algodón son celulosas, ropas de viscosa son celulosas, cáscara de naranja es celulosa. Entonces, ¿por qué no mirar este tipo de materias primas? Y ahí entra la circularidad. Nosotros empezamos trabajando con utilizar el material del preconsumo, la basura que tienen las confecciones de algodón, y ahí logramos a través de una manera hacer una pulpa de celulosa hecha con esta basura. Y ahora ya estamos acrecentando también la basura de postconsumo, las ropas que son de algodón, que son de celulosa, que podemos transformar en una pulpa de celulosa, y hoy día mezclando con nuestra pulpa de madera, estamos en una mezcla de 30%, y tenemos una previsión para intentar llegar en 2025 con 50% de mezcla de esta pulpa hecha de basura de celulosa con 50% de pulpa de madera. Entonces, con esto, la circularidad estamos trabajando para reducir esta basura que se va adelante y utilizarla como una materia prima, una fuente de materia prima para que podamos hacer fibras. La fibra con la misma calidad de una fibra hecha con 100% de fibra de celulosa, de pulpa de madera. Entonces, esto es lo concepto de la idea de trabajar cada vez más esto.
Y otra pregunta que me hacen acá por el privado es, ¿cuál es la diferencia? O sea, acá alguien se fue y tiene algunos pantalones de Candiani, me parece, y que ahí está la parte de refibra, regin, ¿cuál es esas comunicaciones que se puede hacer desde Tencel para explicar el refibra? En ese caso es reciclado, ¿correcto?
Exacto. El refibra, no tenemos dos maneras de reciclar, por ejemplo, una tela, una ropa utilizada de algodón, por ejemplo. O hacemos un reciclado mecánico, que lo llamamos, o hacemos un reciclado químico. El refibra trabaja con el reciclado químico. Nosotros hacemos un proceso químico que transformamos esta ropa, esta basura de algodón, en una pulpa de celulosa. Y ahí podemos mezclar con la pulpa y hacer una fibra con las mismas características, 100% de pulpa de madera. El reciclado mecánico es, nosotros por la tela hacemos un proceso mecánico de transformar la tela en fibras otra vez, y estas fibras, pero siempre para este trabajo se va a romper fibras, vamos a tener fibras cortas, entonces hay una limitación en la reciclabilidad con el proceso mecánico, pero se junta siempre. Juntos siempre vamos a hacer mejor. Entonces, hay telas de Candiana, Vicuña también tiene telas así, donde se utiliza la refibra para hacer el refuerzo de utilizar la basura de algodón con reuso mecánico, con una circularidad mecánica. Entonces, con eso podemos juntar como la refibra es un lyocell de primera calidad, podemos utilizar una cantidad de esto para hacer el soporte, incluso mecánico, para utilizar fibras de más bajo después de reciclado mecánico. Y ahí ponemos el reciclado mecánico con la fibra de refibra, que también es reciclado, y hacemos una cosa con mucho algodón, por ejemplo, pero sin utilizar 1 gramo de algodón virgen, utilizando solamente basuras.
O sea, usamos el desperdicio o en la parte de upcycling, digamos, pero para poder reciclarlo y volverlo a hacerlo fibra. Y yo ahí tengo una pregunta entonces. En el caso que yo use refibra, ¿cómo queda la parte de teñido? Si voy a hacer en el caso del denim, ¿cómo es la absorción ahí? ¿Igualita a la fibra virgen?
Igualita la fibra virgen, tanto el lyocell virgen como el refibra, él tiene una absorción, es celulosa como algodón, entonces comporta exactamente como el algodón, entonces va a tener con los mismos colorantes de la misma manera, este tipo de cosas. Y hay algunos procesos interesantes, por ejemplo, se utiliza un algodón reciclado mecánicamente, que ya está tenido índigo, y ahí se mezcla con la refibra. Ya tenemos al final una tela que está tenida de índigo, pero no pasamos por el proceso de la tintura de índigo otra vez, porque el algodón reciclado ya tenía. Entonces se ahorra todos los productos que se van a utilizar para hacer esta tintura, como agua, energía, productos químicos, energía eléctrica, energía de calentamiento, todo, incluso efluentes que se tiene que tratar, ¿no? Y ahí se hacen procesos muy interesantes.
Me encanta. ¿Y tenéis alguna novedad, Paco? Te digo esa como la última. ¿Alguna novedad de lanzamientos distintos para 2022? ¿Están preparando algo? Siempre.
Bueno, siempre tenemos alguna cosa pronta para salir, ¿no? Pero creo que los dos últimos lanzamientos que hicimos, que no hace mucho tiempo, que son importantes, ya se fue comentado por Tricia en la presentación, que es el modal con tintura índigo. Entonces, la fibra ya sale tenida índigo, ahí puede evitar todo el proceso de tintura índigo posterior. Hay algunas diferencias en relación al índigo tradicional, pero son muy fuertes. Se puede hacer todos los trabajos que se hace con láser, con ozonio, para hacer todos los trabajos en la pieza que se hace con índigo tradicional. Es muy interesante. Y también lanzamos hace poco tiempo el Tencel mate, que lo llamamos, porque la fibra de Tencel es naturalmente brillante. Y ahí entonces lanzamos una fibra de Tencel ahorita que no es más brillante, es opaca. Entonces se le da un otro aspecto, se hace una tela, por ejemplo, de un chambré, de un Tencel, de un lyocell 100%, pero está tan mate o cerca, mucho más cerca del mate que es el algodón, que no tiene el brillo tradicional del Tencel. Entonces, es que ven en este camino siempre de la sostenibilidad este trabajo.
Y es por eso que creo que estamos acá en el día 2 hablando con ustedes, que son personas, empresas hechas con personas que realmente hacen la diferencia. Gilberto, te agradezco mucho la participación. Gracias por tu tiempo y por esa empatía de siempre y por todo ese conocimiento. La gente acá en el chat dice, Gilberto es un genio, está buenísimo. Así que hay una preguntita más y con eso te dejo contestar ahí en el chat de cómo se puede hacer para obtener mayor asesoría de Tencel en Latinoamérica. La persona es de Perú, pero te dejo contestar en el chat que vamos a traer la próxima invitada. Un beso enorme.
Perfecto, para usted también. Y gracias a todos por su tiempo. Estarmos juntos, siempre un placer.
Un placer. Chao, chao.